Good day, Sir Atamosa. Our topic this subject is all about global geography.
Introduction. When couples are asked why they have children, their answers are almost always about their feelings. Foremost, having a child is the symbol of a successful union. It also ensures that the family will have a successor generation that will continue its name. The kinship is preserved, and the family stories continues. A few, however, worry about how much strain a child can bring to the households as he or she competes for the parents' attention and the reverse and in reverse. How much energy the family needs to shower at its love to an additional member. Abstraction. Rural communities often welcome an extra hand to help in crop cultivation, particularly during the planting and harvesting seasons. The poorer districts of urban centers also tend to have families with more children because the success of their small family business depends on how many of their members can be hawking the wares on the streets. Urbanized, educated, and professional families with two incomes, however, desire just one or two progenies, with each partner tied down or committed to his or her respective professions. Neither has the time to devote to having a kid, much more to saving plans. Rural families view multiple children in large kinship networks as critical investments. Their houses can also become the retirement homes of their parents, who will then proceed to take care of their grandchildren. Urban families, however, may not have the same kinships network anymore because couples live in their own or because they move out of the farmlands. These differing versions of family life determine the economic and social policies that countries craft regarding their respective populations. Countries in the countries in the least developed regions of the world that rely on agriculture tend to maintain high level of growth. Global agricultural population has declined. In 2011, in 2011, it accounted for over 37% of the total world population, compared to the statistics in 1980, in which rural and urban population percentages were more or less the same. The blog site Nourishing the Planet, however, noted that even as the agricultural popularity shrunk as a share of total population between 1980 and 2011, it grew numerically from 2.2 billion to 2.6 billion people during this period. Urban population have growth, but not necessarily because families are having more children. It is rather the combination of the natural outcome of significant migration to the city by people seeking work in the more modern sector of society. By the start of 21st century, the world had become 44% urban, while the corresponding figures for developed countries are 52% to 75%. International migration also plays a part. Today, 191 million people live in countries other than their own, and the United Nations projects that over 2.2 million will more from the developing world to the first world countries. Voters pressure has often constrained their governments to institute stricter immigration policies.
The first of overpopulation development planners see of the nation and instradividation as in inductors of a developing society but disagree on the rules of the population growth of decline in the modernization. Thomas Matos, who won in his 1798 an essay on the principle of population that population growth will infinity exhaust world food supply by the middle of 19th century. American biologist Paul R. Ehrlich wrote The Population Bomb with his wife Anne, which argued the overpopulation in the 1970s and the 1980s will bring about global environment disaster that would in turn lead to food shortage and the mass starvation. The purpose that counter-strike like the United States take the lead, the promotion of the global population control in the order to reduce the growth rate to zero. Their recommendation range from the bizarre chemical to the policy of oriented tax and additional child and luxury tax on child-related products to more ay, to more monetary incentive paying of men who would agree to be sterilized after who children to instruction a building a powerful department of population and environment. In the 19th century, the Philippines, China, and India taught the lower birth rates on the Philippines that, unless controlled, the fee expansion of family members would lead to a crisis in the resources, which in turn may result in the widespread poverty, mass hunger, and political instability. As early as 1958, the American policy journal Foreign Affairs had already advocated contraception and sterilization as the practical solution to the global economic, social, and political problem. Advocate population control counted counted for the universal access to be productive technologies such as condom, the pills, abortion and vasectomy, and more importantly, giving women the right to choose whatever to give children or not. Finally, politics determine this birth control. Programs developed countries justify their support from population control in development countries by accepting the latter as conservative society. For this topic, they they the population, the overpopulation of the world, and for the new generation is a food crisis, whatever, and in overpopulation. Like Philippines, they are also overpopulated.
It's the economies, not the babies. The use of population control to prevent economic crisis has its critics. Others pointed out that the population do grow fast in many countries in the 1960s. And this growth aided economic development by spurring technological and institutional innovation and increasing the supply of human ingenuity. They acknowledge the shift in population from the rural to the urban areas from 52 to 75% in the developing world since the 1950s. For example, Betsy Hartman disagrees with the advocate of neo-Malthusian theory and accuse governments of using population control as a substitute for social justice and much-needed reforms such as land distribution, employment creation, provision of mass education and healthcare, and emancipation. Pero yung iba, pinapoint out nila na mas mabilis lumaki ang populasyon sa maraming bansa sa panahong iyon. Ang paglaki ng populasyon ay nakakatulong sa pag-unlad ng ekonomiya sa pamamagitan ng pag-udyok sa teknolohikal at institusyonal na pagbabago. Megacities are now clusters in which income disparities along with transportation, housing, air population, and waste management are major problems. So, megacities is a very large city typically with a population of more than 10 million people. So, megacities have become centers of economic growth and activity. The median age of the population in the US is 29.4 years for female and 30.9 for male in the cities. According to the US Census Bureau, with this median age, states are assured that they have a robust military force. Production can therefore increase relative to consumption, and GDP per capita can receive a boost. The productive capacities of this generation are especially high in regions like East Asia, as Asia's remarkable growth in the past half-century concords closely with demographic change in the region, as infant mortality fell from 181 to 34 per 1,000 births between 1950 and 2000. Fertility from 6 to 2 children per woman. The lag between falls in mortality and fertility created a baby boom generation between 1965 and 1990. The region's working age population grew nearly 4 times faster than the dependent population. Several studies have estimated that this demographic shift was responsible for 1/3 of East Asia's economic growth during the period. A welcome demographic dividend. Habang bumababa ang dami ng namamatay na infant from 181 to 34 in every 1,000 births in between 1950 and 2000, bumababa din ang fertility from 6 to 2 per children in between 1950 and 1990. Ang populasyon ng rehiyon sa edad na nagtatrabaho ay lumago ng halos 4 na beses na mas mabilis kaysa sa umaasa nitong populasyon. So, this demographic shift was responsible for 1/3 of East Asia's economic growth during the period. The Neo-Malthusians predicted a global famine that never happened. Instead, global grain production increased by 250% between 1950 and 1984. Advances in agricultural techniques allowed agricultural to keep pace with population growth. The Green Revolution created high-yielding varieties of rice and other cereals for use in the developing world. Lately, a middle ground emerged between those two extremes. Scholars and policy makers agree with the Neo-Malthusians, but suggest that if governments pursue population control programs, they must include more inclusive growth and greener economic growth.
Women and reproductive rights. The character in the middle of these debates, women is often the subject of these population measures. Reproductive rights supporters argue that if population control and economic development were to reach their goals, women must have control over whether they will have children or not, and when they will have their progenies, if any. Right to have control over and decide freely and responsibly on matters. Sa panahon ngayon, kababaihan na ang focus sa ating society because of the population is already high and out of control. This real correlation between fertility, family, and fortune has motivated countries with growing economies to introduce or strengthen their reproductive health laws, including abortion. Most countries kay nagpapatupad ng reproductive health laws because they are worried about the health of the mother. Kay di ba kahit na minor de edad ngayon ay maaga mabuntis, early become a parent. So ano ba ang reproductive law? According to RA 10354, it is an act providing for a national policy on responsible parenthood and reproductive health. Most countries implement reproductive health laws because they worry about the health of the mother. Bolivia's average total fertility rate was 6.7 children, and Ghana after the government expanded reproductive health laws out of the same concern as that of the Bolivian government. As a result, fertility declined steeply and continued to decline after 1994. So it's a Philippine law that provided universal access to methods on contraception, fertility control, sexual education, and maternal care in the Philippines. Opponents regard reproductive rights as nothing but a false front for abortion. The religious wing of the anti-reproductive rights flanks goes further, abortion as a debauchery that sullies the name of God. It will send the mother to hell and prevent as a new soul, the baby to become human. This position was a politically powerful one party because various parts of the developing world. Dito na pumasok sila condoms, mga protections para mabawasan ang pagtaas sa population. Kung pwede palang mayroong abortion, siguro dito siya mabilong. Unfeeling pressure by Christian groups compelled the government of Poland, Prussia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and even Russia to impose restrictive reproductive health programs, including making access to condoms and other technologies difficult. Muslim countries do not condone abortion and limit wives to domestic chores and delivering babies. Senegal only allows abortion when the mother's life is threatened. The Philippines, with a Catholic majority now, has a reproductive health law in place. But may ilan na sinasabi reproductive rights goes nothing false. Some religious or anti-reproductive rights saying na ito daw ay ginagamit for some pleasure and for damaging the purity in the name of God. A country being industrialized and developed, however, does not automatically assure pro-women reproductive regulations. Maybe some ginaalaw nila ang abortion, but Muslims, they would only allow abortion if naa sa panganib ang mother. But in Catholic majority, patupad na ang reproductive health laws.
The feminist perspective. Feminists approach the issue of reproductive rights from another angle. They are foremost against any form of population control because they are compulsory by nature, resorting to a carrot and stick approach. Punitive mechanism coexist alongside benefits that actually does not empower women. These factors ignore other equally important causes like the unequal distribution of wealth, the lack of public safety nets like universal health care, education, and gender equality programs. Governments have not directly responded to this criticism, but one of the goals of 1994 United Nations International Conference of Population and Development suggests recognition of this issue. Country representatives to that conference agreed that women should receive family planning counseling on abortion, the dangers of sexually transmitted diseases, the nature of human sexuality, and the main elements of responsible parenthood. It is the dilemma that women and feminist movements face today. So when we say carrot and like, it is the combination of reward and punishment to indeed a desired behavior. What is feminist perspective? So, feminist perspective, it aims to understand the nature of gender inequality and examines women's social rules, experiences, and interests, while generally providing a critique of social relations. Much of feminist theory also focuses on analyzing gender inequality and the promotion of women's interests. The few examples identified by feminists are the exclusion of women in clinical drug trials, attributions of gendered cognitive differences in which females' differences are posited to be deviation from the norm, the imposition on women of a male model of the sexual response cycle on women. Therefore, I conclude feminist perspective is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. We live in a world where the gender are far from equal, which serves to harm both men and women alike. Men won't lose rights if women gain more. It will simply allow them to work with the opposite gender. Mary Jane E. Insick reporting.
Population growth and food security. Today's global population has reached 7.4 billion, and it is estimated to increase to 9.5 billion in 2050, then 11.2 billion by 2100. The median age of this population is 30.1, with the male median age at 29.4 years and female 30.9 years. 95% of this population growth will happen in the developing countries, with demographers predicting that by the middle of this country, several countries will have tripled their population. So, today's population growth and food security ay umabot hanggang 7.4 billion at ito ay tinatayang natataas hanggang 9.5 billion sa 2050. The Food and Agriculture or Organizations, or it means FAO, warns that in order for countries to mitigate the impact of population growth, food production must increase by 70%. Annual cereal production must rise to 3 billion tons from the current 2 billion, and yearly meat production must go up to 200 million tons to reach 470 million. The problem here is that the global rate of growth of cereals had declined considerably. So, ang FAO ay nagbabala na sa ayos ng mga bansa na pagaanin ang impact ng paglaki ng populasyon. Ang produksyon ng mga pagkain ay dapat tumaas ng 70%. The FAO recommends that countries increase their investment in agriculture, craft long-term policies aimed at fighting poverty, and invest in research and development. The FAO therefore enjoins governments to keep their markets open and to eventually move towards a global trading system that is fair and competitive, and that contributes to a dependable market for food. So, sa pagkakaintindi ko, ang FAO ay nagrekomenda na dapat tataas ang investment ng agrikultura sa makatuwid. Sa makatuwid, ang FAO ay nag-utos sa gobyerno na panatilihing bukas ang kanilang merkado. The aforementioned are worthy recommendations, but nation-states shall need the political will to push through these sweeping changes in population growth and food security. This will take some time to happen, given that good governance is also a goal. So, ang mga nabanggit raw ay karapat-dapat na irekomenda Tapos, ngunit ang nation state ay kailangan dapat na malawak ang pagbabago ng paglaki ng populasyon at food security.
Conclusion. Demography is a complex discipline that requires the integration of various social scientific data. As you have seen, demographic change and policies have impacts on the environment, politics, resources, and other. Yet at its core, demography accounts for the growth and decline of the human species. It may be about large number and massive effects, but it is ultimately about people. Thus, no interdisciplinary account of globalization is complete without an accounting of people. The next lesson will continue on this theme of examining people and will focus particularly on their global movement.